All right, yeah, so I'm going to have Scribe Light on this episode again. I guess I had him on like last year or maybe over a year ago. But yeah, that was, how long ago was that? 1 year ago. 1 year ago, exactly.
And the primary thing, if there's
This is what he looked like. I think he's going to look pretty similar. Yeah, so this is his YouTube channel. Go to at Scribe Light. He does TED Excellence, which he looks at TED Talks and makes fun of, or he like kind of just tries to make sense of them, makes fun of them. Does other stuff like just talks about Marvel stuff. And he also has true crime content. He has true crime people on. He does he goes over articles, kind of like this is all trying to rationalize and make sense of a lot of the woke, a lot of the culture, social justice, woke culture stuff. I don't know if he calls it that, but that's what I do. So yeah, check him out, guys. Yeah, have you how are you where you are?
I'm doing okay. Are we live?
Yeah, I mean I don't do them live, but
Or are you recording this?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I wasn't sure because if it was live, I'd put the link out and get other people in. But cool.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I haven't tried doing that yet. Like, because I started it not as just a podcast.
Right.
And I guess the live to me seems a little more stressful.
Yeah, I understand.
Uh, so are you like, I've been wondering if you live near like Portland or Seattle or somewhere.
Oh, I'm on the West Coast. That's as much as I'll say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I may have been near those areas at one point or another in my life, but yeah, I'm just on the West Coast.
Okay. Yeah, because I just thought it would be funny. Like, it just funny if to picture you having like near those areas and being so rational. It's like the opposite kind of.
Well, I mean, trying to be rational near any major city these days is kind of a difficult task, I think.
Yeah.
Or just to be, within, relative earshot of it, because it seems like a lot of the, especially well, on the coast specifically, West Coast, East Coast, you get to, I don't know. I mean, I don't classify myself as a liberal and I don't classify myself as a conservative. I just, ask me a question on a particular subject or issue and I'll tell you my opinion. And oftentimes it contradicts one side or the other, depending. But yeah, just seeing, I mean, the last couple of years in particular with the governance over the pandemic and everything, that's just, yeah. Anyway, I could go on, but man, yeah, seeing some of these cities just turn into absolute war zones or garbage dumps is depressing. No matter where you are, to see a great city like San Francisco, or Portland or Seattle. There was I remember seeing a documentary a few years ago where I think it was a local news team or something looked at the slow de-evolution of Seattle and how it was becoming this, homeless camp all over the place and just terrible crime and then of course Summer of Love and everything else, and it's just it's like watching a place look so pretty and then it turns into no place anybody would want to live.
Yeah, I mean it really sucks. I mean, but I'm in New York, so I mean, but like, I do get like annoyed lately with like, I guess a lot of conservative or just the anti-woke people will kind of be like, "Get the hell out of cities! What are you doing?" And I'm like, it's kind of a shame. Like, I mean, I haven't really been to that many other cities, but it's kind of a shame to just like, all right, let's give up on New York and every other city just because, I don't know.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to like you say, you don't want to like retreat from your home, like be
Yeah,
driven out or something. I mean, there comes to, I mean, at a certain point, depending on what your situation is, there might be a level of pragmatism that kicks in. Like if you literally can't live where you are, either because the economy's lousy or if crime is so ridiculous that you just don't feel safe, it's a shame to have to feel like you have to retreat. But you shouldn't just do it because it's peer pressure or some kind of, I mean, obviously, if you want to make a quote unquote statement by like, I'm defecting to Texas or something, I was like, okay, well, I mean, I've got family in Texas. I've been to Texas. It's a nice place, not quite my climate, but
yeah,
literally my climate, not as far as the people are concerned. But but yeah, it's a shame if you've got like roots in a particular place, and then because of the reckless decisions of the people who are supposed to be in charge of being stewards for the city or the condition of the citizens or anything else, just lets it all go to hell. And then they're like, well, what am I supposed to do? Just stand and fight the good fight, or leave and retreat and leave behind, my life or my family or my roots or my history or whatever. That's a crappy situation to be in.
yeah. And I don't know. I mean, I guess because like guys like Tim Pool, I don't know. A lot of them are kind of act like, I mean, come on, get out of cities already. But I mean,
Oh,
I'm
I
also
haven't.
like, then it's kind of seems like it's also kind of everywhere. I mean, it probably depends on the city, like because people think New York, like, oh my God, how could you be there? But like, then I look at like Portland or somewhere, and I'm like, how could you be there? Like, it might be portrayed worse than it is. I don't know.
Uh, I mean, I guess it depends like where you live, because like the worst parts of San Francisco are in San Francisco. If you're in a suburb, or if you're on the edge or something else, you might have a sort of a sentimental sense of either depression or disgust at what's happening near you, but maybe it's not quite affecting you directly. So you can still sort of exist, and it's just an annoyance or just again just sort of a stain on your sort of sense of community or local culture. But yeah, I mean, there are like with any town, even before all this stuff, there's parts of town that are worse than others, and you stay away from those. But it seems like in some of the big cities, the worst parts of town keep getting bigger and bigger over time because they're not being um, maintained the same way. Law enforcement's not being put into place the same way as it used to, and a lot of things are being either legalized or looked the other way because you don't want to, uh, marginalize people and so on and so forth. And it's all, the phrase "bleeding heart liberal" has a certain level of truth to it. Um,
Yeah,
and I kind of avoid using, if I can help it, sort of like broad terms or ad hominem type stuff about political groups and things, because I know it's made up of different factions and different people with different ideas, and not every liberal's the same as one liberal politician, and vice versa for conservatives or Republicans or whatever. But it's really hard not to think that um, the sort of manic compassion,
yeah,
just sort of just if I had to come up with a TEDx title for it, destructive compassion, hasn't overtaken a lot of cities, as we've seen Portland and San Francisco and so on.
yeah. And I mean, yeah, like there's a whole bail reform law here where there's kind of no bail for anyone, so they just keep doing stuff.
Yeah, I've looked at cash bail a couple of times on my channel. It's a really interesting moral question, which there is a point in saying, is it right for someone to have to be in a situation where they have to afford their freedom while awaiting trial? Because if you want to talk about like the most distinct disparity between the classes, do I spend time in jail for a crime I may not have committed, or a crime that by the time I'm done with it, I may, end up being either vindicated of, or the time I'm spending in jail is now going to go towards whatever my sentence is. And in the meantime, I'm losing my job, I'm missing my family, I'm having my whole life destroyed, perhaps for something that ends up being relatively minor as far as punishment if I get to trial. But that's beside the point. Now I've been in jail for this whole time. My life's been disrupted. And the only reason being is that I don't have enough money in my pocket to afford my freedom. It sounds very barbaric in a way. And so I've been sort of conceptually, philosophically sympathetic to people who are against cash bail as a system, but trying to find alternatives depending on the situation is kind of I don't know. The couple of things I've seen so far, I remember was something like, and I think they were trying it out in somewhere in California, if I remember correctly. I think it was in Los Angeles or something. They're trying to do, instead of cash bail, the judge would have this checklist, and they would assess each individual on certain criteria as to what was the likelihood that they would not appear in front of the judge based on all these criteria, not specifically their economic situation, although I think that probably was concluded. But then you're just sort of exchanging someone's ability to pay for their freedom with a judge's potential discretion and or bias. And are you really improving the situation? Like I say, the whole point is you want to make sure somebody appears for their trial. And if you're not going to hold a financial incentive over their head to make sure that happens, what else could you use that would be as effective? I don't know. That's the thing. That's what's trying to be figured out right now, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I guess there's sort of a trend here with people getting pushed on the subway tracks.
Oh yeah,
which is fun. But
what a horror story! Absolutely, I've seen videos of that stuff before. I've seen there was one just the other day I saw where it's like some like 16-year-old girl or something was just headed to get her hair done for prom, and some crazy homeless lady just shoved her in front of a train, or on the tracks. And thankfully she wasn't hit, and people pulled her out before she was hit by anything. But I can't even imagine. It's just like, I've only been to New York once for a student trip back when I was like 12 or 13, and we rode the subway. And even then the stories of people getting pushed, I stood way back from the edge of the platform. I was like, I don't have to be right up with my nose to the door. I can wait a minute.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to get shoved in there. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that happened before, I don't know, the pandemic, because I don't know if it's the media. I don't know. I didn't know if people did it before or now it's a recent trend.
Well, I couldn't say as to the frequency, but people have been pushed onto the tracks or jumped onto the tracks many times over. I think the social media, people with their smartphones, just the instantaneous nature of communication now probably makes it seem more more usual than it maybe. I don't know. Like I said, you'd have to look up like the MTA or something and find out what the statistics are on train pushes. I hope it's a low number, but heaven knows these days. Yeah,
I mean, because earlier I just saw like, oh, we're gonna put guardrails up, and to me it seemed like a superficial. Like, I kind of doubt they'll go up in every single subway station, because there's so
many. About guardrails on a subway platform. I'm just thinking about bottlenecking people trying to get into those doors, or if the train doesn't line up just right, then they got some awkward stuff and people getting injured or tripping over them. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think the best thing to do is just education. People, always give yourself 10 feet from the edge of the platform. Don't stand at the edge of the platform. Big. I think they already do have like big yellow lines or something, or big warning stripes or something on there, like stay back from here. But people, they're not going to pay attention, or they're so wanting to get to the front of the line. So,
yeah. I mean, when I first moved here before the pandemic, I mean, there's just a lot less people now. I mean, it gets busy sometimes, but every time it was like I was kind of afraid, like it would get so crowded. I'm like, is this like a health hazard? Like,
Well, everything is a health hazard.
yeah, that's for sure.
Breathing is a health hazard. Eating too many carrots is a health hazard. I don't know, living in fear too much. Like my biggest sort of primal lizard brain fear is paralysis, or something that takes away my ability to be independent, right?
Yeah,
And something could happen at any point of the day that I'm outside or inside or whatever that could cause that. I could fall down. I could be hit by a car. I could have, another, vessel burst in my body. So whatever. And so that possibility, as relatively remote as it is, exists in my life every day. But if I lived like, oh my God, if I make a move, I'm going to get paralyzed, I never go anywhere. I never do anything.
yeah,
And you can't maintain that defensive, hermetically sealed crouch for very long, if at all, and maintain your sanity. It just doesn't make any sense. That's why I had more during the course of the pandemic with the lockdowns and everything. I had more sort of morbid concerns and curiosities about what happens after this is over. If people get used to this behavior, get used to this way of life, and especially in the beginning, I didn't know how long it was going to go on. If these 2-3 years or whatever are the immediate formative years of a generation of children, I can't even imagine what the long-term effects are of living in a world that is telling you every day, if you look the wrong direction, if you're in the wrong place, if you breathe on the wrong person, you're either going to kill somebody or you're going to die. And just like, it's just can't even imagine what the next few years are going to look like when those kids grow up in the positions of either, what the next round of protests or social movements, or how that's going to frame things for people.
yeah. I wonder, like, because I mean, to me, like, it seems like it's people in their 20s maybe that are more like they mask still here. And like this week, like there's been like wildfire smoke here, and like today there was people masking for the smoke.
Yeah, wildfires on the West Coast, man. The California fires, when they hit, are, and depending on which way the wind blows, literally, it can really screw it. Especially during the pandemic, when you're supposed to be locked down.
Oh yeah.
And so on top of, you can't go anywhere. On top of that, in the summertime, when it was hot as hell and there was nowhere to go, and I didn't want to go outside or anything. And on top of that, you had to keep everything closed up because of the forest fire smoke. It was practically unbearable. It was just, and my apartment has nothing that could be considered good air circulation or anything. I don't have an air conditioner or anything. It's just an apartment. And so at the time, I didn't have an air conditioner. Really, I've since gotten one, thankfully. It only really helps cool down my computer room. But man, that was like triple torture. It was terrible. I don't wish that upon anybody, even my worst enemy.
Yeah, I mean, that I was gonna like. I mean, I don't think even New York's lockdowns got as bad as some of California's, maybe LA County, I don't know. But
yeah,
I mean, just being you saying I have a computer room, I'm like, I have like, a small studio. But you go to New York because
I'm lucky that I have the space that I've got. I basically got like a second sort of tiny little bedroom. It functions either as a bedroom or just as an extra room, I suppose, depending on what you do with it. But I don't have a roommate anymore, so I just converted it. Basically, I mean, it's a studio in the functional sense. It's where my computer and my microphone is, but I've got a giant window in front of me, and the acoustics in here are the probably the worst you could possibly ask for when it comes to doing a studio thing. But hey, noise cancellation and a compression microphone.
Yeah. Yeah, like that was I was like thinking, oh, okay, I'm gonna move if we have another lockdown, because
Mm.
New York, like, the reason you go there is you want to go outside or whatever and go. Not like I'm, going to parties all the time, but just yeah.
Well, you want to experience the city. I mean, if you're living in New York or nearby, the whole attraction to it is the life around you. The sights, the scenes, the people, the restaurants, the just being part of the city. But even then, like if you're living in the Northwest or something, you want to go outside and experience nature.
Yeah.
You want to get the fresh air and everything. I mean, people are not designed to be cloistered in caves anymore. You want to be out, and you get cabin fever. And as we've heard so many horror stories of people who, because of the lockdowns, they're having to spend more time with each other in enclosed spaces that they would have otherwise. And that just, if there are any cracks in relationships that were just sort of simmering before, now they're up to the forefront, and you get more. I mean, I'd be really curious to see, and I'm sure somebody's done it. Look at the divorce rate before the pandemic, during, and then immediately after. And I'm sure somebody else has already done like domestic violence statistics over the course of the pandemic and everything else, because that's also got to be a problem. But yeah, we're not, and it didn't do any good anyway. Well, I don't know if I want to get into like that stuff, because on YouTube you start posting this stuff. Are you going to post this on YouTube? I don't know if you are.
Yeah, but I kind of, that's just an extra thing. Like it's also on podcast app. So
yeah, I've gained this. I mean, speaking of paranoia, I've gained this sort of like internal red flag system of, well, there's this, unfortunately, it's been ingrained in a lot of YouTubers over time that there's certain subjects, certain words, certain trains of thought that if you say the wrong thing, or you go the wrong direction, or you dwell too much on this one thing, it's going to get you in trouble. It's going to get your channel struck with a community thing, and so on. I mean, I just had it happen, like last month or something, where an episode of Lords of the Night from like 2.5 or 3 years ago got me a community strike on the basis of advancing conspiracy theories about the election. And the thing was, when I looked at the video, we read a story about the election, but we weren't advancing any theories. We were just talking around the subject, which you're not even allowed to talk about it. Thankfully, the strike was taken off pretty quick thereafter after I appealed. Community strikes are one of the few things you can safely appeal without like risking legal peril or something. Because a copyright strike or some kind of defamation claim or something, if you use their system, you're making some sort of like legal declaration of truth or whatever the heck else it is.
Oh yeah.
And that's always a sketchy thing, because I'm not a lawyer. I can't afford a lawyer. It's a YouTube video. Just tell me to delete it. I don't care. But when it comes to community strikes, at least they allow you to directly appeal, and they don't put like some kind of legal pitfall in front of you for it. So, but yeah, like I say, and any YouTuber trying to maintain either monetization or, depending on what we're talking about, not have their channel either struck or deleted or something. Yeah, you got to be a little wary of what you're saying. Unfortunately, it's not YouTube is an amazing platform. It's not a free speech platform in the sense of anything. Not that I think that anything should go per se, but it's a minefield.
Yeah. So like they told you at least what part?
No, they just said that this video has been taken down because and it has a little stock answer of advancing blah 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 election invalidity or something. And so I mean, at least again, for some reason the community guideline strikes are very specific. In copyright strikes or copyright claims, or in my case, the first and so far only time, knock wood, that I got a defamation claim. They got a video banned first in the UK and then in Saudi Arabia. And then I followed up with a copyright strike on something that the person could not have owned copyright over. But if I was going to argue against that, again, I'd be put in some kind of legal lockdown, for lack of a better word, of whatever my statement was, a statement of truth. I'd have to say with absolute certitude, this person does not have copyright on this thing. And it's like, it was a TEDx talk. TEDx talks are under Creative Commons license. There's a lot of nebulous territory there, but they're not copyright owned by the person on the stage. But then I have to think to myself, well, as far as I know, but I don't know. Yeah. So it's like, I have no recourse. So, but yeah, so it's, YouTube is always, like, every time I post something, I in the back of my mind, I'm kind of thinking, is this going to get me in trouble today or 3 years from now when the algorithm decides that there's a problem or I said something wrong or whatever? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So is that why you pause a lot? And I know that's something people do. Like,
well, so the YouTube has a algorithm set up for content matching. So if I was just to put up a piece of content that has some kind of copyright thing on it, or is so let's say I post a video on my channel, and then somebody else somewhere takes 30 seconds or something of my video and plays it on their channel uninterrupted. More likely than not, I'm going to get a notice from YouTube saying, hey, we have a content match on your video. Here's where it occurred. And because I've had this happen before, like Sinatra, like this is way back in the day. Like Sinatra says, in the olden days, he asked if I would do a video that he could post on his channel as sort of a guest video deal. And so I made a video for that, and he posted on his channel. And we agree. I think, if I remember correctly, we agreed that we'd let it run 2 weeks on his channel exclusive. And then after that 2 weeks, I'd post it on my channel just so I could have, I made content for my channel and everything else. After I posted it on my channel, I got a notice about 10 minutes afterwards saying, hey, we found a content match to Sinatra Says using this video. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's weird, but that's permissible. I didn't argue it or contest it or anything, because obviously he would, because it's the same video. When it comes to what I'm doing is there's two levels to it. One, if you let something that already exists on YouTube run too long, either by audio or visual, the algorithm might catch it and then turn off your live stream. Because if it's a live stream and they catch you streaming somebody else's content for too long, then there's a danger in their mind that, this is some kind of copyright issue or you're duplicating somebody else's work. So that's the one thing. There's a mechanical concern that if I'm doing a live stream and I'm critiquing a TEDx video or another live stream, another panel discussion, that I'll be detected as more or less, trying to steal someone else's work. But the other thing too is that in order to, at least in spirit, if not in legal terms, because I don't know, be able to qualify what you're doing as a transformative work for the sake of fair use, the amount of content that you're creating by yourself as opposed to the original content you're looking at has to exceed a certain percentage. So like if you look at any one of my TEDx videos, the TEDx talk might only go on for 10 minutes, but my stream is an hour. So that means that the TEDx talk makes up a relatively small amount of the overall content that I've produced. And that is sort of the insulation legally to qualify for fair use. So that's why I pause a lot, make sure that there's enough space in between bits and pieces of the TEDx talk, and also to avoid any content matching. I don't know what the timer is. Like if I knew I can go 30 seconds straight without risking having my stream ended, then maybe I'd have a clock next to me or something, but I don't know what that is. So I kind of give it like a sentence or two. There's sort of trying to find that sweet spot of someone's made a statement or something, or a funny thing happened. I stop, think about it for a second, and then move on.
Yeah. Did you look up all that about fair use and how exactly to?
Oh, well, I mean, most of my knowledge about fair use comes from numerous instructional and educational videos on YouTube over the years from people who are like, especially when we had the adpocalypse, especially whenever YouTube changes something in the algorithm, or there's some big story about somebody copyright striking somebody unfairly, and then there's like a video out there about what is fair use or how does it work on YouTube. So yeah, most of my knowledge, my understanding comes through osmosis and also sort of, I guess, trial and error. So I've been very fortunate. So I think part of the advantage is that I'm not a huge channel or anything. But I have I've been contacted at least 2 or 3 times in the past by people who I did videos on. Like I did a TEDx, and the lady in the TEDx came across it, or somebody referred it to her, and she left a comment. I've had a couple of fairly civil conversations with a lady who I did a couple of videos on, because she was or is sort of a business coach or consultant or something, and I did a couple of videos looking at some of her stuff back in the day. And it really comes down to, does somebody have some kind of problem with what you're doing? And then if they're going to try to copyright strike it, do they have a claim? And if you're commenting on something, if you're criticizing something, if it's only making up a percentage of the overall piece, then as far as I know, until somebody decides to take me to court or something, as far as I know, I'm in safe territory.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I did record an intro about you again separately. But yeah, so all the like TEDx stuff you do, like you've only had a couple people find out, and then
yeah, so I'm trying to think. There was one lady. The TEDx was about, I don't remember the exact title, but the TEDx was about women of color in fashion or something like that. And in the course of it, it's relevant to the story. So part of her complaint was that the bodies of women of color were being exploited and used in fashion and this, that, and the other. And when she's giving this talk, she was wearing like not a skirt per se, but like shorts. And she's a very leggy woman, let's just say. And her complaint during the course of the TED Talk was about fashion and female bodies and exploiting them for attention and so on and so forth. And in the course of the stream, I made a comment of something to the effect of, given her complaints, it's interesting that she's chosen the outfit that she's chosen. And it's something like that. And then I got a tweet, I think, from her, or something like that. And she was, I can't remember exactly. She was sort of like being snarky about like somebody has a problem with my outfit or something. And I responded, I said, no, and yeah, this was on Twitter. And I said, no, I just found it interesting that given your argument about this, and this, and how, these things are bad or being taken advantage of, I just found your choice of outfit for the presentation seemed to be a little contradictory. And because I assume because I responded with a reasonable explanation of why I made the comment that I made, she responded back something to the effect of, got a point. That was about it. In other situations, I'm trying to think of, yeah, there's only been a couple of times I've had some interactions. Like I'd go back to the original video of something I've done and leave a comment based on whatever I thought up or whatever conclusion I came to after doing a video on the subject. I've had a couple of interactions with some of those people, like Dr. Chris Hoff, a character that I've looked at many times over the years, a family therapist, the radical therapist, as he calls himself. And I remember one of his earliest videos, and one of my earlier videos, he did a piece talking about patriarchy in mental health or something like that. And I left a comment on his video, and he responded directly. And you know, it's always interesting. It's like I don't have any, like, in almost every case. I mean, there's a couple of exceptions just because of the material or the theory or something that they were pushing, but almost every case, I have absolutely no animosity towards any of the subjects that I look at, like personally or anything. And so, and I'm always kind of grateful to have any interaction with somebody, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise, because I still have this mentality. And I was thinking about this the other day because on this coming Saturday, I'm going to be hosting my talk show, Living on Borrowed Crime, and I'm going to have a true crime creator on there named the Disturbing Truth, and he makes really great content. And throughout the waiting time for that to happen, I felt like I'm kind of starstruck. I'm a little nervous because I'm going to be talking to somebody whose stuff I like and who, like, I've listened to I've watched their show. There's still this part of me, because of how old I am, there's still this part of me that has one foot in the era where anybody who made a television show was like off somewhere in the distance, and it was a production, and it's, you know, it's Robert Stack or it's John Walsh or something, like hosting America's Most Wanted or Unsolved Mysteries. And it seems like an untouchable individual, like some kind of like mythical being. And yet I've had this weird experience now, and it's so commonplace now, is that I've had on my channel, my rinky-dink little channel, I've had on people who I sort of idolize and see as sort of like, these are television show presenters. Because that's basically what these videos are. I mean, if somebody produces something on YouTube, whether it's really well produced or it's just, you know, really well scripted, there's always this sense of unreality that takes place in my mind, because I'm only half a child of the internet age. I'm still, like I say, my root programming is still back in analog. And so the idea that I would speak to the person behind one of these things is just like, woo. And that kind of gets me all kind of weirded out sometimes. But again, it's very commonplace now, which is just weird to me in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like that with you, actually. I mean, especially the first time, because I don't know, also your voice is so like
Kermit the Frog.
I didn't think that until you said it on something. I was like,
oh no, I accept it. I've owned it. People have been like, you sound just like Jordan Peterson, or you sound like Kermit the Frog's older brother. Like, yeah, I guess I can see it. And I mean, I have done a Kermit the Frog impression in my time. I'm used to my voice now more than I was when I was younger, because I've had to listen to it more often on recordings for editing. I still don't like my voice. When I hear myself talk, I just like, ugh. I'm used to it, but I just like, I think I sound weird. I don't know. It's just, I don't know that I'll ever get over it. I get so jealous of like Ranting Monkey or Dave's Lemonade or Matt Orchard, or these guys that just have these perfectly round-toned voices for radio. You know, I just like, gosh, I wish I sounded that cool. Every time I hear myself, I think I just sound like a dork.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of think I mean, like, I think I emailed you before, like, you reminded me of Sam Harris. Although now I kind of want to apologize for saying that.
Oh, no. People change.
Took a turn a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things. You got to don't idolize people.
Yeah.
idolize ideas, idolize principles, because, you know, people can, like I say, turn a corner, change their minds, have their own sort of revelation that goes counterclockwise or whatever. Um, there's a video I did long ago where someone was trying to they were trying to argue that Black Lives Matter and Martin Luther King Jr. were on the same page, or trying to say something like people who venerate Martin Luther King Jr. Are wrong to do so because
Yeah.
he wasn't perfect or something. And I'm like, I think I made the point in there, like, you know, I don't idolize the man because of his failings as a person. I idolize his principles that he espoused. And here's the thing: it doesn't matter who says those ideas ultimately. The question is the idea, is the principle good? Because the principle will always outlive a fallible human being. The ideas and the principles and the values written down in the Constitution were far, far greater than the men who actually wrote them. And so, having an understanding of historical figures, having admiration for individuals for things that they've done and so on, perfectly fine. And some people are just purely good people, like Mr. Rogers. You're not. You're perfect. I feel perfectly safe in idolizing that man. I don't think I'm in bad territory. But, you know, generally speaking, otherwise, yeah. Live up to the best parts of the people you admire, but don't think that the best people you admire are the best people that have ever lived.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think people joked about Mr. Rogers before, like, wait till something about him comes out, then it'll be all.
Well, I mean, there's a certain truth to it. I mean, Bill Cosby is an example, right? You know, America's dad and so on and so forth. That image is tarnished. And you know, you're far better off emulating the idea of Bill Cosby, the good father, than you are quoting the man now. And you know, like I say, the ideals that someone puts forth, or the image, or the role model that they were in their sort of gilded form, is probably a better way to go than saying, quoting directly Bill Cosby. But yeah, if something terrible came out about Mr. Rogers tomorrow or something, or like in Britain, I guess probably the closest Cosby equivalent that I can think of was Jimmy Savile, who was like, if you know about Jimmy Savile, no, he was Britain's everyman, and he was everybody's hero, and he was everybody's uncle and pal and everything. And then after he dies, only then do you find out what a monster he was, and it kind of pours a can of grease on the entire photo album of that guy's life, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think because I guess the whole, like, you know, separating the art from the artist, like, I guess there's certain ones like him, not like, I don't know, even watching the old footage of him, I'm like, I don't really. But I never really liked Cosby's stuff. Like, I never got into it. But, like, I think there's a degree for me, I guess. Like, I'm not mad at someone that would still listen to Cosby, but, like, I guess up to it, like, you know, there's still stuff that comes out. Like, there's, I guess, the band Rammstein, who I like, has stuff coming out now, but it's like not clear, and everybody's already like, no, I can't listen to them again. And I'm like, I don't know. I think people do need to kind of separate that kind of stuff too.
Well, it's more difficult to do when the entirety of a person's art is them.
Yeah.
You know, because like knowing the truth, or I should say at this point, because who knows, but knowing the allegations, knowing the history, knowing what's been said and so on and so forth, or the reputation of someone now, and then trying to look back at things that they said previously without having an ear towards, you know, if they make a joke about a certain subject, and I'm not talking just about Cosby here, I'm talking about like anybody whose reputation has been blown up by whatever, especially comedians in general, if they're making light of something, but then, you know, behind the scenes that they were really doing this or they were suspected of doing that, it does take the fun out of it.
Yeah.
You can't, at that point, it's very difficult to just look at a comedian in particular as someone holding a mirror up to the world, because once their dirty laundry is out for everyone to see, it's there. It's now part of their story. They're not just sort of a disconnected observer of human life and everything. Now they are a figure beyond that. Their real life has become more prominent than whatever comedic fiction they're putting up on the stage. Or if they're an actor like Kevin Spacey or something, it's difficult to sort of watch him act knowing what he's been accused of and or what he's done and not think of that when you're looking at somebody and trying to imagine them as a different character, because I think it ruins the suspension of disbelief over a comedic performance, a dramatic performance, or anything else really.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. I guess it's hard to
oh, it looks like you froze up. Am I talking to the ether now? Uh-oh. Well, oh, yep. I have to edit this out.
Hey, sorry.
Well, it's a good thing you weren't live. You can cut that part out.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. Computer overheated or something?
Mm.
Did I miss any gold that you were?
Yeah, for those of you at home that are coming in now, yeah, a large portion had to be cut because Brian's computer crapped out. I honestly forget where I was when I stopped talking and realized that you weren't here anymore. So whatever it was, I'm sure it was great. You'll have to decide by the time you get to it. It was great.
Edit this out.
I don't know. It's like my old laptop did the same thing.
Yeah.
Weird. It's only when I talk to a guest too. It's like never on my own, but I guess it's always whenever I'm too close to the truth that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. All the alphabet agencies suddenly realize, aha, now's the time to shut down his computer.
Yes. Yeah. You know, it's those agencies are almost becoming the alphabet mafia now. Isn't that?
Oh, well, that could have been said any time in the past. It's always I'm no expert. Everything that I ever hear about that stuff always ends up being some kind of conspiracy theory or something else. You know, you have to cite a specific case and look at the actions of, if they're even public knowledge, because oftentimes you don't actually get the inside scoop. But yeah, has the FBI screwed up before? Sure. Has the CIA screwed up before? Yeah. Are they doing so right now? Probably. What can we do about it? Nothing, practically.
Yeah. Well, I actually met the government. Maybe soon there'll be a government LGBTQ committee or something. Like.
Oh, there already is. I mean, there's already elements of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just as an aside thing, I think I said this on a video a long time ago. I've never quite understood why the T is even included, because you're talking about sexual orientations, and being transgender has nothing to do inherently with sexual orientation. You could be transgender. You could be a transgender man and like women or men. There's no determinative factor there, just being transgender. Everything else is an orientation. Something else is, I'm not quite sure what the official classification would be, but I always found it weird that's grouped together as though they're inherently tied one to another. But anyway.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I forget, because that's another. I mean, I thought it was crazy in the, Summer of Love or whatever, but then, I guess now it's more the trans issue is like the kind of the almost the tipping point. It seems like it's like the. I mean, I just like don't get because I'm like, yeah, do whatever you want, but like as soon as they were like, no, like trans women are literally women, I was like, wait.
Yeah, you can't escape reality, and trying to gaslight society into thinking something is true when it's not. It's a very touchy subject. I get it.
Yeah.
And not to sound too cliche about it, but in the course of my life, and even now, I have friends who are transgender. They have gone through the process in one way, shape, or form. And it's, it really comes down, at least in my experience, with just my individual relationships with people. There was a guy in my social group, and I've told this story before, who I knew, and for the sake of privacy, John. And I knew him as John for 2 years or something. And then one day, John just stopped showing up to social events. I mean, it wasn't one of those things where it's like, oh, where's John or something. It was just one of those things. And then like 2 or 3 months later, John reappeared, but now John was Jane. And John looked a little different because John had gone through some changes. And it was different. It was odd, but John was a grown adult.
Yeah.
And it took a while to refer to John as Jane. And it took a while to,
how dare you take a while?
Well, it was, I mean, as much as they transitioned, it was a transition for those of us that knew John and cared about John, and now it was Jane. And then after about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months or something, you got used to calling Jane Jane, and it never really came up again. But that's because I knew Jane, and Jane, she wasn't like militant about it.
Yeah.
I mean, she had an understanding that I think, I mean, I only spoke to her once about it, and only very briefly. But the sense that I got in our conversations and things that I heard elsewise is that for as much of a change in lifestyle as it was for Jane, she was completely aware that it was also a change for everybody around her, because Jane had a family who also had to sort of switch how they operate and everything else. Now, that didn't make me believe that Jane was anything other than a man. That didn't make me believe that Jane suddenly transmogrified into a different version of a human being. But for the sake of our friendship and just for everything else, it didn't bother me to call Jane Jane and to refer to Jane as a she. It was no big deal. But if someone came along and said, you have to do this, if Jane was like coming up and like getting all freaked out if somebody said the wrong thing or started demonizing them or saying you dead named me and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, I probably wouldn't like Jane all that much anymore, because there has to be a certain level of empathy, not only for the person that's going through this, but also the people around, for just the sake of socialization. And so to have, I think one of the worst things to happen to the trans community is trans activists. Yeah. Because becoming extremist militant about it in one way, shape, or form doesn't help your cause. Because then you just feel threatened. You feel like you're being vilified. Like, what did I do to you? Live your life. I don't care. If you're a grown adult and you want to do whatever you want to do, it's got nothing to do with me. It's sort of like, I think I've talked about this before. It's sort of like religion. It's like, as long as you're not hurting anybody else, or you're not a threat to yourself or something, I don't care what you believe in. It's not my business. Don't force it upon me. Don't try to assess me or judge me on the basis of your beliefs in that realm. And if you do, I'm not going to care, because it's like, it's not my business. But otherwise, like, this is where it comes in, where it's like, I have to change my entire way of thinking about reality to satisfy somebody else's belief system. And it is a belief system at that point. Once you start saying that a man is actually a woman, like, no, we didn't go through, it's the same thing. And is any religious practice where there's a ritual where something becomes something else, or I do this and suddenly you are cleansed, or I do this and suddenly some material becomes a different material. Does it happen in reality? No. Some people think it does, or for the sake of ritual, or for the sake of spirituality, it's how they work. And I have nothing to say to that. It's got nothing to do with me. But then trying to tell me is if you say through this ritual, this piece of wood becomes gold, and then you put a piece of wood in front of me and say, abracadabra, shim bam boom, and you point it at me and say, this is now gold. And I look at it like, it'd be the same thing as me sort of giving into that and sort of deciding to take part in an effective delusion. Now, the fact that you think that this wood is now gold for the sake of your, religious faith or belief or whatever else, if that works for you and that makes you happy and it's not doing me any harm or anybody else any harm, hey, have at it. None of my business. But as soon as you start trying to vilify me for not taking part in your delusion, you're completely alienating me. You're completely alienating rational people who otherwise might be on your side in any other instance.
Yeah, one thing I was wondering, like, so I mean, I guess you look up a lot of, since the pandemic, I guess I've been pretty, looking all this stuff up about woke everything, like kind of like the stuff you look up, and then also like all this, and then kind of like recently about Maoism and stuff like that, and then there was the pandemic. And do you are you like, are you still like optimistic about the future, or like let any of that stuff get to you? Or
I mean, it's difficult to see the upside when you're sort of marinating in this stuff as often as I am. But I mean, at this point, I'm a very well-trained cynic. But there's one element to cynicism that always has to be there, and that's at least a spark of hope that things can change. Otherwise, why are you upset? If a cynic hasn't given up, that's the thing. A cynic, as sour as they may be, as vitriolic as they might be, part of them is still hoping that things aren't as bad as they actually are. Otherwise, there's no reason to fight. You just might as well throw up your hands and walk away. I think that there are more reasonable people out there than unreasonable people. I think that there's always going to be some kind of backlash when things go too far. I think our overall tolerances as to where the line is has, I mean, the more recent generations, let's say, have, I think, been conditioned to accept things more readily. I mean, the pandemic is one really good example. Like, everybody just kind of caved to people who, on the one hand, they come out and say something one day that this is the way to protect yourself and yada, yada, yada. And then 3 weeks later, they say, oh, well, that was really nothing, or it really doesn't mean anything. People who say we have to lock down to do this. And then somebody comes up and says, well, wait a second. When did this ever work in history? I remember there was, I think it was on the Bill Maher show or whatever, Real Time or whatever. I think I want to say it was Neil deGrasse Tyson. I don't know. But they were arguing about the whole pandemic, governmental decisions and things. And Neil deGrasse Tyson said something to the effect of, we need to do lockdowns because this is how you handle a pandemic. And it wasn't until somebody afterwards, I think on a tweet or something, said, well, how many times has a full societal lockdown been used in a pandemic before? We haven't done, no other pandemic in the country has ever been treated that way. If you were sick, you stayed home and were quarantined. It wasn't everybody and their brother has to be locked down. But now that we've had that event and everybody acquiesced and everybody, and I tell you what, I don't know that I've ever seen worse tribalism than during the course of the lockdowns and everything, because and there's not a lot of harps or halos to go around in the situation, but there were a lot of people who called the conservatives a death cult because they were wary of the advice they were being given by the medical establishment. And yet the people that I saw wishing for and celebrating and getting giddy over even the possibility that someone on the right side of the aisle might either be sick or have died as a result of the virus. It was, you want to talk about a death cult. I never saw people so happy on the idea that someone was going to die. It was sick, absolutely sick, but it was fine. And now, after it's all kind of phased out, what are we doing to make sure this doesn't happen again? And I'm not talking about there will always be diseases. I'm talking about the societal damage, the governmental overreach. Are any protests about that? Any reforms taking place? It doesn't seem like it to me. So my hope for the future, I don't know. I've been looking at this stuff, at least societally and culturally, since 2016 now, at least with any intention. And I keep thinking to myself, at some point, there's going to be a breaking point. At some point, someone's going to go too far. Some organization, some governmental body or something is going to cross the line, and it's going to be too much, and the backlash will find a new equilibrium. But I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take. You see some hints of it in Hollywood and media, where they just keep serving up the same gruel over and over again, and people are starting to not accept it. But as far as the rest of society goes, I'm not quite sure.
Not quite sure.
Yeah, I mean, Scribe's great for putting up with all of that. Check out Scribe Light on YouTube. I was going to ask him a couple other things. We can do a follow-up, or I don't know, I guess I'll have to see. I'm supposed to have somebody else on the podcast also this week, so I don't know how I'm going to... I mean, God, what a pain in the ass. Like, why? Why does it have to... When I get a big name... When I get a big name like Scribe Light, the computer says no. Okay, we were talking about the T issue, and is that why?
Is that why? We were talking about the T issue? Well, you heard it, guys. It got cut off right when we were getting into the T issue. We're getting into that community that shall not be talked about, that shall not be named. And you heard it here first, guys. Cut it off. My computer said nope.
Shut the fuck up.
You will not speak on this issue. We're shutting it down. Hey guys, we got a podcast talking about the T issue. We gotta shut this. All right, hit the button. You restarted the computer. Hit it again, guys. Hit it again.
You know what they say? You gotta make lemonade out of lemons. It'll be funny if on Scribe's end his also shut down at the same time. I don't get it. I mean, I really don't like that happening. I mean, having a big name, he's gonna blacklist me all over the podcast land. Having a big name like Scribe on, and then that happens. My name's good as dead now. Okay. Check out Scribe's channel. All right, I guess I'll put this together later, guys.
Thank you. Check out Scribe Light, patience of a saint. Helping out, going on the little guy's channel.